Once I got dropped off at like 1 in the morning in the shadiest bus stop in Tampa, even worse than a Greyhound station. Everyone in the stop got picked up one by one, my phone was dead so I had to charge it to call an Uber. Suddenly I'm all alone in the only lit part of this open huge area in a bad part of town. I see a dude in the distance come towards me, mind you I called for an Uber like at most 2 minutes prior to seeing him come towards me. He takes like 2 to 3 more to get to me. Just as he sits next to me my Uber pulls up and gets down from the car real fast to get my bags. The dude that sat down muttered "You're real lucky, boy." I got chills that lasted an entire day. My Uber driver looked at me angrily and didn't speak almost at all the entire ride and gave me a bad rating. I think I might have been robbed or even killed that night, and my Uber driver thinks he probably could have too. I'll never forget that moment, never. Edit. Nobody believes me because it really sounds too perfect a timing to be true to some, so I never really tell anyone anymore. When I was a teen, my mother used to take me to bingo all the time. It was our thing. One night we had a friend of mine with us, and we were driving home. Small towns and backroads in southeast Missouri, back when cell phones were Nokia bricks and Google Maps didn't exist. We got lost about halfway home, as we often did, but my mom was a good navigator so we weren't too concerned. My friend asked what time it was, as they had a curfew. I vividly remember answering 8:42 after glancing at my watch, and my mom saying 8:45 after looking at the clock on the dash. I think the number stuck with me because we then discussed how one of the two was off by a few minutes. Right after that conversation ended, my mother found a road to turn around on, so she pulled in and we saw a metal arch with some cemetery name on it directly in front of us. Out of nowhere the car came to a stop and completely shut off. No dash lights. No nothing, and I swear the temperature dropped 10 degrees in an instant. She tried to start the car a couple times to no avail, then paused to light a cigarette, as she often did when she needed a minute to think or regroup. Right as she flicked her lighter, we all saw a big flash of light. Much brighter than that bit could have produced. And then the car started, despite the fact that her hands were nowhere near the ignition. I suddenly had an absolutely horrible headache, and when I expressed as much they said they did too. We didn't think anything of it, other than it being a bit strange, and she began to back out of the cemetery road. About the time she got back on the main road, she looked down at the dash and said "What the F?" So we looked to see what was wrong. The clock now read 11:17. Mind you, no less than 5 minutes had passed. I said that it was weird, but maybe the car shutting off had messed with it. I glanced down at my watch to confirm, only to find it now said 11:14. They were still 3 minutes apart, but nearly 2.5 hours had passed and we could not explain it. We kept talking it over and assumed we were just being paranoid. But when we got home, which was about 45 minutes from where we had gone to play bingo that night, it was indeed well after 11 p.m. I've never been able to explain it, and everybody assumes it's a made-up story, but I'll never forget it, and I'll never stop wondering where the time went. To this day I cannot remember as this is a dream or a memory, but I remember it clear as day. In my neighbor as a kid we would all meet up in this abandoned lot and play kickball and whatever kids did back then. I went one day and no one was there. I sat for a while and an ice cream truck that knew we were always back there came through. As it looped I got on my bike and was about to start heading home. Behind the ice cream truck there was a shadow of a human-like thing with huge pointy feet. It almost looked like it was skipping behind it then just flipped and starting heading towards me. I freaked out and pedaled as fast as I could and this thing chased after me all the way to my house. It is to this day one of my scariest memories and I tear up when I tell the story. I've stopped telling it because everyone says I'm crazy, but I know what I saw. Walking home in the middle of the night, had to cross this patch of road that dipped into a valley with no light or sidewalks. I was walking on the right side of the road which was lined with tall brush. As I'm walking I hear some rustling like something was moving around in the brush. What I see is what appears to be a humanoid creature, pale white, hunched over facing away from me. I could see the bones of its spine sticking out from its stretched out skin. Dude, I was so shook I sprinted a good half-mile uphill. Funny enough, a few nights after I had to cross the same valley. I ended up running down the middle of the road and a cop stopped me up the road. He asked me why I was running and I straight up told him that spot is creepy. No questions asked, let me go. I think he knew too. I was driving home from the beach years ago and pulled into a rest stop. It was late, like 1 a.m., and there was one car in the parking lot. I get out and head to the bathroom and thought it was a little odd that the only other car there was idling with the headlights off. I had to go bad so I didn't look closely. Go into the bathroom which appeared empty and pee. While standing there I can feel someone watching me, hairs on my neck stood up. Not a good feeling, especially when I heard some feet shuffle. I run back to my car. The other vehicle was still there, engine running. This time I could see that no one was in it that I could tell. Backing out of the parking space, I swear I saw a person standing at the bathroom's entrance looking at me. My girlfriend at the time said I made it up to try and freak her out. I don't stop at rest stops at night anymore. Still freaks me out. My husband has a collection of soda memorabilia, including things like tin-serving trays. We lived in a small apartment and I hung many of his items in the dining area, including a tray that depicted a woman holding up a glass. These had been up for months, when one night out of a deep sleep I jolt awake to the sound of a woman's sharp, terrified scream. I jump out of bed and look out the window, around the apartment, and wake my husband to ask if he heard anything. No clue. We went back to bed. The next day as I'm getting ready for work I noticed a big empty spot on the wall and found the woman tray on the floor face down. I hung her back on the wall. When I was 14 years old, a man approached me at a car wash and told me I was beautiful. He wanted to buy me. Once I had a vague understanding of the situation, I walked back to my family's van. The man followed. My mom was standing by the car. Even though I was super naive, I told her to get in and drive. She did it, and she never listened to me, but she knew something was wrong. As we drove away, she kept asking what he'd said, but I never told her. She had a van full of 4 girls under 16, she would have been horrified. I've never told anyone this till now. I feel better. Phantom hitchhiker. When I was 21-ish I worked in a remote area that was a 40-minute commute one way. I also worked a lot of nights. I saw the hitchhiker 3 times, in the same spot wearing the same clothes. He was a middle-aged Latino in a maroon shirt, plaid jacket, and a red baseball hat. At first I thought he was a dairy worker. There were a couple nearby, but nearby was still 3 miles. That wasn't even taking into consideration that he was wearing a heavy coat in the middle of summer. I kept driving. I saw him again months later, same clothes, same spot, thumb out. I actually got a better look this time because it was winter and raining so hard my wiper blades could barely keep up, but he didn't seem to see me. He was looking down the road past me. Anybody standing in rain coming down that hard would have been soaked, but he wasn't. The final time was shortly before I quit that job. It was early summer and my hours had changed slightly, so when I saw him again the sun was just starting to set. Then what I had suspected was confirmed. His shirt wasn't maroon like I thought. It was stained with blood. I passed by that spot twice a day. There were new crosses going up on that road all the time because it was flat and straight with nothing around except the odd dairy or cornfield. For miles it was known for being a bad stretch, where lots of people died. I never noticed the cross where he stood because it had fallen over. When I left that job for the last time I pulled over where he stood and found his cross and propped it up again. It said Poppy. That was almost 20 years ago. I hope he finally got picked up.